50 greatest short stories. Looking Back by Guy De Maupassant. Translated by H.N.P. Sloman. Now, darling, said the Comtesse, it's bedtime. The three children, two girls and a boy, got up and went across to kiss their grandmother. After that, they went to say good night to the Curé, who has been dining at the castle as he always did on Thursdays. The Abbé Mauduit took the two girls on his knee, put his long arm in the black-sleeved cassock round their legs, and drawing their heads toward him with a fatherly gesture, he pressed a long, affectionate kiss on his forehead. Then he put them down, and the little things left the room, the boy in front and the girls behind. "You are fond of children, mijkor," said the Comtesse. "Very fond, madame." The old lady raised her eye to the priest's face. "And don't you ever find it hard living alone?" "Yes, sometimes." He fell silent, and after a pause he went on, "But I was never made for everyday life." "What do you know about it?" "Oh, I know well enough. I was made to be priest. I have followed my vocation." The Comtesse was still looking at him. "Come, mijkor, tell me about it. Tell me how you made up your mind to renounce all that makes the rest of us love life, all that comfort and console us. What decided you not to follow the normal path of marriage and family life? You are neither a mystic nor a fanatic, neither a killjoy nor a pessimist. Was there something that happened, a great sorrow, that made you take life vows?" The Abbé Mauduit got up and went to the fire, holding out the heavy shoes of the country priest to the flame. He still seemed to be hesitant about answering. He was a tall, white-haired old man who had been the parish priest of the Saint Antonio di Roche and the neighborhood for 20 years. The peasant always said to him, "He's a really good shot." He was a good man, kindly good-tempered, accessible, and above all, generous. He would have divided his cloak like Saint Martin. He was ready to laugh and equally ready to cry like a woman, which lowered his reputation a little in the eyes of the dour peasant. The old Comtesse de Sable, who had retired to her castle to Roche to bring up her grandchildren after the deaths in close succession of her son and daughter-in-law, was very fond of her Curé and used to say to him, "He's got a good heart." He came every Thursday and spent the evening at the castle, and he and the Comtesse had become close friends with a genuine, open-hearted friendship possible only to the world. They were so much of a mind that they hardly needed to put their thoughts into words, being both good souls with the simple goodness of unsophisticated, kindly folk. She insisted, "Now, mijkor, it's time for you to make your confession to me." He repeated, "I was not born on ordinary life. Fortunately, I discovered it in time, and I have very often had cause to know how right I was. Mr. Parents, who were wholesale haberdasher and Bodier and quite well off, were very ambitious for me. They sent me to boarding school very young. People do not realize how unhappy a boy can be at school simply from loneliness and being away from home. The routine life without affection is good for some, but disastrous for others. children are often more sensitive than people think. And if they are shut up in this way too early way from those they love, excessive sensitiveness, which plays havoc with their lover, and may develop and become pathological and dangerous. I hardly played any games. I made no friends and was violently homesick all the time. I cried in bed at night and was always trying to recall memories of home, trivial memories of little insignificant things and happenings I could not get out of my mind or I had left behind me. I gradually became a nervous wreck, for whom trifling difficulties assumed the proportions of acute misery. The result was that I remained morose and self-centered, inhibited, and friendless. The process of increasing mental stress went on subconsciously but surely. Children's nerves are easily affected. Great care ought to be taken to avoid any disturbance in their lives until they are particularly mature. But who realize that for some boys at school, an undeserved imposition may cause as much mental anguish as the death of a friend will later on. Who really appreciates that something quite trivial may cause in certain immature minds an emotional upset, which may in a very short time inflict incurable damage. This is what happened in my case. Homesickness developed in me to such an extent that my whole life became one long agony. I told no one and nothing about it. My natural sensitiveness gradually increased till it became pathological and my mind was one open wound. The slightest touch produced twinges of pain and agonizing repercussions which did me permanent harm. Happy indeed are those whom nature have given a thick skin and the armor of stoicism. I reached the age of 16. The fact that everything hurt me made me abnormally shy, knowing that I had no defense against the blow of chance or fate. I shrink from all contacts, all advance, all activities from life. I was continually of the defensive, as if constantly threatened by some unknown but always anticipated misfortune. I dared not speak or act in public. I was obsessed with the idea that life was a battle, a frightful struggle, in which one received terrible blows and wounds, not only painful but mortal. Instead of hopes of happiness for the morrow, such as normally people have, I was conscious only of an undefined terror, and I want to hide, avoid the struggle in which I was bound to be defeated and killed. When I had finished my studies, I was given 6 months holiday in which to choose my career. A very simple incident suddenly enabled me to understand myself and revealed to me my unhealthy psychological condition. I realized my danger and made up my mind to avoid it. Badia is a small town in flat country in woods all around it. My parents' house is in the main street. I now spent my time away from the home I had missed and longed for so much. I wandered over the countryside, daydreaming by myself, so that my dream could develop without interruption. My father and mother wrapped up in their business and anxious about my future, could talk of nothing but their sales and careers open to me. They loved me like hard-headed practical people with their head rather than their heart. I lived in the prison of my own thought, never free from the terrors of anxiety. Well, one evening after a long day out, as I was walking fast in order not to be late home, I saw a dog running a full speed toward me. He was a sort of a red spaniel, very thin, with long curly ears. He headed 10 yards for me. I stopped. He began to wag his tail and came slowly toward me with a timid movement of his whole body, cowering down as if begging and moving his head gently from side to side. I spoke to him. Then he began to crawl toward me on his belly, looking so humble, so miserable, so appalling that tears came into my eyes. I went towards him, but he ran away. He soon came back, and I knelt down on the knee and spoke kindly to him, enticing him to come closer. At last, he was within reach of my hand. I stroked him very gently, taking care of not to frighten him. He became bolder, gradually stood upright, put his paws on my shoulder, and began to lick my face. He followed me home. This was the first living creature I had ever loved passionately, because he returned my affection. My love for animals was no doubt exaggerated and ridiculous. I had a vague idea that in some way we were brothers, both lost in life, both lonely and defenseless. He never let me, slept at the foot of my bed, was fed in the dining room in spite of my parents' protest, and he came with me on my solitary walks. I often stopped at the edge of the ditch and sat down on the grass. Sam immediately ran to me and lay down by my side or on my knee, nosing at my hand to make me stroke him. One day toward the end of June, as we were on the road to St. Peter de Cable, I saw the bus from Rabiru coming. It was traveling fast with 4 horses, a full gallop. It had a yellow body and a black leather tilt over the seat on the top like a cap. The driver was cracking his whip, and a cloud of dust rose under the wheel of the heavy vehicle and drifted away behind. Suddenly, just as it reached me, Sam, perhaps frightened by the noise and wanting to get to me, dashing imperceptibly, the hoof of one of the horses knocked him off. I saw him roll somersault, get up and fell again amid the forest of legs. The whole bus gave a great bump. I saw behind something resting in the dust. He was almost severed in two. His belly was torn open. His entrails were hanging out, spouting blood. He tried to get up and walk, but he could only move his forelegs, which scrabbled at the ground. His hind quarters were already dead, and he was howling pitiably, mad with pain. In a minute or two, he was dead. I cannot describe my feeling and how much I was affected. I could not leave my room for months. One evening, my father, who was furious with me for making such a fuss over such little things, cried, "What will you do when you have a little sorrow, if you lose your wife or children?" In a flash, I began to understand myself. I realized why little everyday troubles assumed catastrophic proportions in my eye. I saw that I was so constituted that I felt everything over keenly when was the hypers susceptible to painful impressions, which were intensified to my abnormal sensitiveness, and the paralyzing fear of life gripped me. I was without physical desires or ambition, so I decided to sacrifice the possibility of happiness to the certainty of the suffering. Life is short. I'll devote myself to the service of others. I'll soothe their sorrows and rejoice in their happiness. I said to myself, as I shall not feel either myself directly, I shall experience these emotions only with diminished intensity. And if you only knew how suffering still tortured me and wearing my heart, but what would have been intolerable agony in my own case have been sublimated into sympathy and pity. I could never have endured the sorrow with which I come into contact every day had it been my own. I could not have seen a child of my own die without dying myself, and in spite of everything I still have such an undefined subconscious fear of something happened that the sight of the postman coming to my door sends a shiver down my spine. So now I have nothing to fear. The Abbé Mauduit fell silent. He was looking into the fire in the great fireplace, as if seeking to read their world mysterious of secret life he might have lived if he had faced suffering more bravely. He went on in a lower voice. I was right. I am not made to live in the world. The Comtesse said nothing. At last, after a long silence, she commented, As for me, if I had not got my grandchildren, I don't think I should have the courage to go on living. The Curé got up without another word. As the servant in the kitchen was asleep, she took him herself to the door into the garden and watched him, his tall, slowly moving shadow in the light of his lantern plunge into the darkness. Then she went back and sat down by the fire and thought of many things that do not occur to the young. Okay.